The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way we live, the way we travel, and the way we work. Of course, it's had a big impact on how we do our jobs and what our guests expect as well. Now it's time to talk about how we'll do our jobs in this changing landscape. Not every property will approach this in exactly the same way, but there are some basics that we all need to know. To work safely in a hotel these days, it's essential to know how the coronavirus that causes COVID-19 works and how to prevent its spread. COVID-19 is mainly spread from person to person. Anytime an infected person sneezes or coughs or talks or laughs, they create respiratory droplets that can land in the noses and mouths of anyone nearby or even be inhaled directly into the lungs. That means that if you're in close contact with that person within 6 feet of them, there's a risk that you could become infected. Those droplets can also land on surfaces like tables, lamps, phones, or just about anything, really. If a person touches a contaminated surface and then rubs their mouth, eyes, or nose, it can have the same outcome. It can lead to infection. It's concerning stuff, of course, but there are steps that you can take to keep yourself, your coworkers, and your guests safer, and to make sure that guests feel comfortable when staying with you. Keeping yourself healthy is the best way to keep your coworkers and guests safe. The virus spreads between people in close contact, so physical distancing is the best way to avoid it. And because not all infected people show symptoms, it's best to keep your distance at all times. Also, avoid touching your face with unwashed hands. You don't want to give the virus a free ride into your body. And, of course, keep those hands clean. That's more important now than ever before. What else can you do to keep your coworkers and guests safer? The most important thing is to stay home if you're feeling sick. So tell your manager if you don't feel well. They'll let you know what you need to do. And if one of your coworkers or guests exhibits the symptoms of COVID-19, same thing. Let your manager know right away. This can help keep you safer too. Most management will ask employees to go home and self-isolate, and they will report confirmed cases to the local health authority. Talk to your manager if you have any questions. Some properties may look for signs of illness during a pre-work screening or well-being check. Some may check to see if employees have a high temperature, or they may ask you to check yourself. It depends on the property and local legal requirements. Taking care of your own health is important, and there are also plenty of things you can do to keep your coworkers and guests safer. The first step, no surprise, is training on what you need to do to reduce the risk from COVID-19. You can expect training for all staff in your property. This includes operations, maintenance, housekeeping, security, food and beverage, basically everyone. By now, we've all heard plenty about physical distancing, and we know that maintaining a 6-foot distance can help to reduce the spread of COVID-19. And that's important because we will be sharing space with our coworkers in the back of the house and with our guests in the front of the house. Even so, there are steps we can take. One important precaution you can take is to make sure that coughs and sneezes are covered. And this is where face coverings come in. You may choose to wear one, or you may be required to. The main purpose of a face covering is to keep the people around you safe by controlling the spread of droplets. Whether you're coughing, sneezing, or even just talking, laughing, or breathing. You want face coverings to fit snugly and comfortably against the side of your face. It doesn't matter whether they tie around the back of your head or use ear loops, either is fine. Just make sure that the face covering covers both your mouth and nose, fits snugly, and that you can breathe without restriction. When you're putting the face covering on, be careful not to touch your eyes, nose, or mouth with unwashed hands. You may be tempted to touch or adjust it. Avoid this as much as possible. But if you do touch the face covering, always treat it as if it's contaminated. And when you remove your face covering, either discard it or place it in a container or bag to be laundered as directed by your manager. Wash your hands anytime you touch your face covering and change your gloves if you're wearing them. Your manager will let you know if you need to wear disposable gloves at work. Washing hands correctly to reduce risk from coronavirus is a 5-step process. Wet your hands and exposed arms with warm running water. Apply enough soap for lathering. Scrub your hands and arms vigorously for 20 seconds. Be sure to clean fingertips, under fingernails, and between fingers. Rinse your hands and arms under warm running water, and then dry them with a single-use paper towel or hand dryer. Okay, so when do hands have to be washed? Well, first off, right when you start your shift or when coming off of a break. And anytime your hands may have become contaminated, like after sneezing, touching your face, cleaning, smoking, eating, or drinking, and obviously after using the bathroom. Plus, you also want to wash your hands anytime you accept items from a guest, like IDs, cash, credit cards, or key cards. Washing hands is always the preferred option. But what if you think your hands may have become contaminated and you're not near a sink? In that case, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, recommends using a hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Then correctly wash your hands as soon as possible. You can expect to see hand sanitizer dispensers throughout the property to make it easily available for both employees and guests. This includes reception areas, lobbies, employee entrances, and exercise areas, basically anywhere your managers think they may be appropriate. And there will also be some new signs going up. In the back of the house, you may see signs with information on droplet control, how to properly use face coverings and gloves, and hand washing. There will be signs in the front of the house, too. They'll provide guests information about things like any required use of face coverings and physical distancing. Okay, let's talk about cleaning and disinfecting. We're all going to be hearing a lot about this as we work during the pandemic. Here are the basics. When you clean something, you remove the soil from a surface. This is the stuff you can see. It's usually done with a mixture of detergent and water, but just because something looks clean doesn't mean it's safe. That's why we disinfect. Disinfecting uses heat or chemicals to destroy pathogens on a surface, including coronavirus. So what needs to be cleaned and disinfected? Well, basically anything that an employee or guest can touch. The term for this is high-touch surfaces, and they're just what they sound like. They're the things that we all end up touching frequently throughout the day. Light switches, doorknobs, elevator buttons, touch screens, and tool handles are all examples, and they all must be cleaned and disinfected regularly. In the back of the house, high-touch surfaces must be cleaned and disinfected according to your operations policies. At most properties, this will be a minimum of twice per day. If you share tools and equipment with your coworkers, then these need to be cleaned and disinfected as well. This should be done after each shift or whenever you transfer the tools or equipment to another person. It's a similar story in the front of the house. High-touch surfaces are going to be cleaned and disinfected multiple times per day. Your manager will let you know the exact process, but expect it to affect just about everything, starting right at the front door with check-in counters, bell desk, ATMs, and handrails on escalators and stairs. Moving into the property, pool seating and surrounding areas, dining surfaces, and all seating areas will also be cleaned and disinfected regularly. And elevators too. The button panels need to be cleaned and disinfected at the beginning of each housekeeping shift, and then continuing throughout the day. All of this is really important because when guests see us doing our part, it will help them feel comfortable and safe in our property, and it will also help keep you and your coworkers safer too. All right, we finally arrived in the guest room. Many properties will have a minimum period of time between guest departure and room cleaning. This would allow time for the room to air out before housekeeping staff enter the room. Think of everything that can be touched in a typical guest room. Television remotes, door and furniture handles, nightstands, telephones, in-room control panels, light switches, temperature control panels, curtain rods, alarm clocks, luggage racks, hard surface flooring, the list goes on. You also want to discard all single-use items that the guests use during their stay. And in the bathroom, you have toilet handles and seats and water faucet handles. It's a lot to keep track of. Just remember, if a guest can touch it, then it should be cleaned and disinfected. including bulk or residential-sized toiletry items. Check with your manager for specifics. How often rooms are cleaned during a guest stay may change a bit due to coronavirus. Your manager will let you know what needs to be done. But what do you do if there has been a known or suspected case of COVID-19 in the guest room? Quarantine the room and take it out of service. That room must go through an enhanced cleaning and disinfection following your property's procedures. When handling soiled linens from these rooms, you should bag the linens inside the room. This will keep them contained while they're transported to the laundry facility. Once there, the linens should be washed on the warmest appropriate setting. Then they should be dried thoroughly. Last stops for cleaning and disinfecting are the food and beverage areas. There will be changes here, too. Traditional room service will be replaced with no-contact delivery. Buffet services or guest self-service areas may be adjusted or eliminated. If your property continues to offer these, the food will likely be served by an attendant wearing appropriate personal protective equipment. Utensils should be changed and washed frequently. Also, don't put out too much food at one time. This will help reduce the exposure of the food. Maintaining sneeze guards will help as well. Of course, dining tables and everything on them will have to be cleaned and disinfected between guests. That includes everything: chairs, menus, salt shakers, check presenters, payment devices, and anything a guest could touch. If you work with food, there's one more thing you need to know. Disinfecting and sanitizing are not exactly the same. They may use different chemicals, and you can't leave disinfectant on anything that actually touches food, like a cutting board. So you need to rinse it off. Then clean and sanitize that food contact surface according to your property standards. You already know about the importance of physical distancing. With our coworkers, it's important to avoid close contact in employee dining rooms, offices, and other shared spaces. In the front of the house, we need to help our guests maintain that 6-foot distance from other people not traveling with them. You might see changes like one-way guest flow with marked entrances and exits and increased spacing between lobby furniture. Our guests will see a lot of these changes right when they arrive. Front desk agent spacing will likely be increased, and steps will also be taken to reduce guest crowding in lobbies and while waiting in line. You should encourage contactless payment if it's available, and if that's not possible, then reduce close contact as much as you reasonably can. Changes to maintain physical distancing will continue throughout the property in meeting and convention spaces, pools, beaches, basically everywhere. Things like furniture spacing and signs are all tools to help guests keep that safe distance. It's a similar story for guest parking. Encourage self-parking as much as possible. If your property offers valet service, disinfect the touch points in the vehicle. And the same goes for van and shuttle services as well. It's important that our guests know that their safety and comfort are important. So let them know that housekeeping staff will not enter a guest's room except when the guest requests or approves it. And once a guest checks out, that room will be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. And that's it. You know what you need to do. Don't work when you're sick. Take steps to keep yourself healthy. Keep everything clean and disinfected, and maintain physical distance. Of course, the situation continues to change, and we learn more every day. If we do our part, we can help keep everyone safer, coworkers and guests. Okay, all that's left is the quiz. You're ready.